This is the 97th Helluvaboss video you'll see this week. You know, hyperfixation can be pretty addictive, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to be funny. I know I'm not funny at all. I mean, my face is like always straight. So you know, hyperfixation can be good sometimes. For example, today, I had a pretty terrible day. I cannot swear in the first 15 seconds of the video. But I had a pretty terrible day because I had 3 exams today. 3. Not 1, not 2, but 3. 2 of them I passed. And the third one I did not pass. So, you know, I'm gonna have to retake it the next week. And you know, the last thing I wanna do is to complete my study, and instead of going home, retake freaking exams. So yeah, I need something to distract myself from it. So why not talk about some silly, stupid adult cartoons? Yeah, let's talk about Octavia Goisha. She's my absolute favorite character. Probably not just in this show, but maybe ever. I mean, at least she's the most relatable character that I have ever seen. I really relate to her, and before her, I didn't really realize how important it was to have some kind of relatable representation on screen. Not, you know, not only sexual or racial representation, but also representation of the kind of emotional conflict that you can relate to, that makes you feel that you're not alone in this struggle. And you know, in this way, I really like the character of Octavia. But unfortunately, as I've been saying before, her character is so criminally underwritten. And you know, at the ending of the final episode of season 2, which is Sinsmas, when her outburst towards Stolas, we see that Stolas is running towards Octavia, grabbing her hand. I'm just trying to remember by memory, saying that he loves her, that he cares for her, and he wants to be with her. And then Octavia just says something like, "I don't believe you. You never really cared for us. We were never really good enough for you." And then she leaves. And you know, this moment made a lot of people angry, feel anger towards Octavia. And I am not gonna lie here, because I also felt this anger towards Octavia. How can she not believe Stolas when Stolas does so much to prove his love for Octavia, to prove that he cares for Octavia, especially considering how terrible her mother is in comparison? I mean, Octavia has absolutely no right to treat Stolas this way, right? Well, I think the problem is that we see pretty much the whole family dynamic, the relationship between Stolas, Octavia, and Stella. We see this so precisely just from the Stolas' perspective. And from we see everything from his perspective, pretty much. We follow his point of view. And from his point of view, we do know that he loves Octavia. We do know that he cares for Octavia, because we see moments when there is no Octavia around, but we can still hear what Stolas is saying. We know what he's thinking. So from Stolas' perspective and from our perspective as viewers, Stolas absolutely does love Octavia. So that makes her outburst at the end completely unreasonable. But that's just Stolas' point of view. The problem is that we do not get Octavia's point of view. We don't get her point of view, and this is one of the biggest problems of both shows. Is, as I was saying in my 2 previous videos, the writers of the show, I mean Vivienne Medrano and other writers too, you know, the other writers who work on the shows are all men, which, you know, raises certain questions that these 2 shows do not have a single female writer, except for the creator of the shows herself. So the fundamental problem with the shows is that these people simply don't know how to write women, like at all. And I'm currently also preparing another video about Has Been Hotel, and I'll just spoiler it a bit. The video is essentially about how Has Been Hotel has really good and catchy songs, but at the same time Has Been Hotel doesn't really function all that well as a musical. And my reasoning is that Has Been Hotel essentially doesn't really have a strong musical continuity, doesn't really, have a song reprises in a traditional sense. And the reprises that we have, the reprises of Charlie's and Lute songs, essentially do not change anything about the characters. Like, Lute remains the same and Charlie remains the same, which is a sign not only of bad reprises and bad musical continuity, but also the inability of the writers to develop the female characters, since from song to song, since the reprise is supposed to repurpose the original song, but the reprise does not do that. It basically serves the same purpose. The characters are female characters. In my example, those are Charlie and her antagonist Lute, remain in the same position throughout the episodes. But that's just a little spoiler for my upcoming video about Has Been Hotel not really being a great musical. I actually do a lot of comparison to, in my opinion, a much better musical which is Disney's Tangled, but I'm not going to be focusing on that right now. My point is that the female characters are underwritten, and Octavia suffers from that too, because if we try to put ourselves into Octavia's shoes, what did Stolas do for her? I mean, in the show, I tried to think about it, and the only good thing that Stolas actually does for her is at the beginning of the second episode, when she's just a toddler. She's crying because she's a kid, and Stella doesn't really care about it, and Stolas just takes Octavia, starts singing her a lullaby, You Will Be Okay, very beautiful songs and fantastically beautiful animation that you cannot deny the talent behind. Especially you cannot deny the background talent, because the backgrounds of helluvaboss can look extremely good, and the beginning of and You Will Be Okay song is a good example of that. But apart from that, does Stolas actually do anything good for Octavia? I mean there isn't really much interaction between these two characters on screen, which is of course a terrible thing from a writer's perspective. But what we do have, episode 2 of season 1, Stolas takes Octavia to Lululand. Essentially pretty terrible experience for Octavia. I mean she's not a kid anymore. Yes, just like many other kids, she did enjoy some theme parks and performances and stuff when she was a kid. But as she grew up, obviously she matured and she grew towards completely different things. But Stolas, obviously being an absolutely fantastic parent, didn't know about that, and he brought Octavia to the same theme park, Lululand, where they used to go when she was a toddler. So thus completely ruining her day. We remember the ending of episode 2. She was completely unhappy. Then the next interaction that they have is in the second episode of season 2. Stolas being caught up in his, trying to divorce his wife, and in his relationship with Blitz, he completely forgot that he promised one very important thing to Octavia, that important thing being to see stars with her. So Octavia, she's been looking forward to that day when she and her father could finally go outside together and see the stars, and the father who promised to be a good father, who promised to listen to Octavia, to spend more time with her. This is essentially what Stolas promises to Octavia at the end of the Lululand episode. But obviously he breaks that promise. He spends much more time with his lover, with his imp lover, and not with Octavia, to the point that he doesn't even remember what he promised to Octavia. But you can always justify that by saying, well, his emotional state is not really good. He's divorcing his wife, and his wife Stella is trying to assassinate him, and he's just craving some kind of close romantic and sexual relationship with someone who genuinely likes him. Although I think Bliss was a terrible choice for that. You can justify that, but then there comes an episode which completely destroys Stolas as a character. I mean, to me, the episode Mastermind completely destroys his character because it shows us how much Stolas doesn't actually care for Octavia. No matter what he says, how much he loves her in Sinmas, in Mastermind, he just shows that he does not care for her. He does care for her, of course. But when it comes to choosing between her and Blitz, he would certainly, definitely choose Blitz over Octavia, because he comes to the trial of Blitz. Blitz is essentially being sentenced to execution for violating various hell rules, such as using the Goisha grimoire to go to Earth and to commit crimes on Earth. That's essentially the IMP business. They're assassins for hire. So he's being persecuted for that. He's being sentenced to death by Satan and the others. But then Stolas arrives, and Stolas claims that Stolas is a mastermind. He is a mastermind behind all this IMP business, which is not true. Stolas is not a mastermind, of course, but Stolas is trying to take this blame. He's telling the court that the Blitz should be released, and it's actually Stolas who should be executed, and Stolas is completely prepared for being executed. Now, of course, Stolas being a Goichi royal, he wasn't gonna be executed. The maximum penalty that he receives is an exile, but he was not gonna be executed at all. But the fact that he thought he would be executed, and knowing that he has a daughter, that he has a terrible wife, Stella, who absolutely doesn't care for Octavia, he came to this court ready to sacrifice himself. He was ready to die for his imp lover, just to save his imp lover. And in that very moment, I can guarantee you, he did not think about Octavia, because how could he do that? Because if he dies, then Octavia is left functionally an orphan. I mean, Stella very obviously does not care for Octavia. Stella did not want Octavia. The marriage was arranged when Stolas and Stella were kids. Stella doesn't really have motherly love, at least we don't see it at all on screen. And judging by the episode Sinmas, yes, Stella, despite hugging Octavia at the end of Mastermind, she doesn't really love her. And hugging Octavia was kind of a trick to manipulate her into hating Stolas even more. It was a trick to show Octavia that mommy is here while daddy is out there somewhere sacrificing himself. And in that specific context, Stella was right. Stella was there for Octavia, and Stolas just wasn't. And imagine Octavia hearing about this trial, and seeing her father preparing to be executed and leaving her completely alone. And as I said, functional, Octavia would have been left an orphan. Functional, because Stella is Stella is not much better than an abusive aunt or a stepmother, despite being a biological mother. So basically, Octavia would have become, Cinderella, with a terrible mother who doesn't care for her, and also a terrible uncle, Andrew Alphus, who makes some pretty weird comments about his sister, and who knows what he would have done to Octavia if Stolas was actually executed. Just leaving Octavia to live alone with Andrew Alphus and with Stella, and how can you then justify Stolas? I mean, I do understand why people justify what he did was absolutely horrible, but again, we lack Octavia's perspective. We completely lack her perspective on things. So for us, Octavia's reaction to Stolas feels unreasonable because we only know Stolas' point of view. We don't know Octavia's point of view. We don't see Stella's point of view, obviously. And you know, I've been thinking, if you go to the writing class at college or something like that, and if you make your teacher, professor, somehow watch helluvaboss, you know what would they say? They would say this is a completely terrible writing, because you have a very complicated family of three: Stella, Stolas, and Octavia. And we absolutely get nothing from Octavia and from Stella. Stella is even worse. She's not even a character. She's, I don't know, she's essentially just a prop. Stella is just a prop. She's not a character. And and we doesn't get anything from Octavia's point of view. There is not a single scene fully focused on Octavia. The only scene where there is no Stolas around is Octavia and Aunt Luna, two of them, and they talk about Stolas. Yeah, so something like that. It's an example of really terrible writing, and it's a very big problem of the show, how much it focuses on Stolas' point of view, while completely underdeveloping every other member of his family, namely Octavia. So, despite Stolas being a terrible father and doing terrible things to his daughter, this kind of representation of the family dynamic through his point of view tricks us into believing that he's actually a good father, but he's actually not, honestly. And again, this is an example of pretty bad writing in the show. The show does have some moments of brilliance. I think Octavia's "I Will Be Okay" is the first actual insight into her psyche, into her understanding of the situation. Moments like this make me regret that the writers aren't actually interested in developing Octavia much. They are not actually interested. It could have been a very good exploration of what it means to be a broken child with parents who do not care for her. It would have been very good character exploration. I'm very sure very important for many people, especially for girls and women, if the show is trying to be progressive or anything. But we just don't get that, and my only hope is that we get more of that now in the subsequent seasons. I think we're getting seasons 3 and 4. So yeah, I'll be following the show just to see what the show has to offer in regards of Octavia. Thank you very much for listening to this completely unfunny, bland rant, and see ya. Hopefully you won't fail any exam, because I'm an idiot.